everybody. We will commence the June 28th regular board meeting of Uplift Education. Is there anybody you want to introduce at this time?
I think everyone remembers Helen Clark, who was with us at a previous meeting, so welcome back.
Thank you very much. Okay.
You're very welcome. That's it? Yeah.
Thank you, everybody, for the good turnout for the quorum, which I guess we only have to do once a year.
Oh, and I definitely want to introduce Amy. We're so glad Amy that just moved from Pizza Hut, the Chief People Officer of Pizza Hut. So glad you're here. Board packet by any chance?
So why don't we go ahead and dive into the consent agenda? We can start with the minutes from our prior meeting. Were there any comments or corrections to the minutes? And if not, could we have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second. All in favor? Opposed?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, so we pass, and we'll move into regular reports, and we'll start with Stacy in the financial report.
Going to pull us up real quick. So this is got the standard update that went out in the pre-read. Let's see. There we go. We'll just talk through the dashboard real quick. So this will be our final one for this fiscal year. Just highlighting that we have ended the year 150 or so above our budget. Actual enrollment ended up at averaging for the year at 13,720, which generated some of the upside that you saw in this year's actuals. On some of the later slides, we just under 97% attendance rate, and I'll remind you that we have adjusted our budgeting to 96.5 for future years, and the budget that you're going to approve this evening, as well as the projections that we included in the recent bond package. We're going to end up the year in solid form on cash, and we've come in really tight on an expense basis too. So this all looks pretty familiar to the last few updates and few dashboards that we've seen. So any questions there? Okay. So the, let's see, we are not actually through. That's for, let me just walk to the couple of slides later, just to give you an update on where we are in terms of our bond package. I'm on slide 10 that went out in the pre-read. We are basically just winding down the last little steps here towards closing next week. The exciting part of this is slide 11 that reflects a couple of figures as it relates to our pricing. So what I'm showing you here is just the last 5 issuances of the blue bars measured on the left axis, just the absolute all-in interest rate that we've realized on the bonds. You'll see that the 2016 bonds are in at 4.1%, which is just phenomenal, as it, driven partially by where the market is near all-time lows. We priced the day before the Brexit vote, and we actually might have seen that number a little bit lower even afterwards. But we're happy to go where we were to see the numbers that we've got. The red line and the numbers that we're reflecting there, I explained it in a note down here, but I'll try to explain it a little bit more. So this is what we call our spread to the MMD. The spread on the 30-year bonds. Every bond that we issue has got a few different maturities inside of it: 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, 35 years. And to compare ourselves, like, how did we really do? Like, how did this shake out? We need to know where the market was, and then how close were we to the market. And so the market is sort of always moving, but the 30-year MMD is what were the AAA sort of best credits that were out there. What were they getting on any given day? What would they be expected to receive on any given day based on market conditions? And so there's this underlying number, and how low that is will drive the absolute number, the 4.1% for us. But then what we're really after is to see how tight we can get to that 30-year AAA. Us as a BBB minus credit, there's a certain point where a BBB minus is not going to get down to the AAA numbers, but to see that spread on a yield to call basis at 111, where it's been at 140, 142 in the past, is just fantastic. So just a symbol or significant of ongoing strength of organization on every front. And when we do the investor calls, they ask very few financial questions. They want to know about the demand for organization, the growth plan, competition, what's your strategy on future compensation, all sorts of other stuff besides financial. So this is
Just quite, first of all, congratulations.
Yeah, it's a huge.
It's really amazing.
Pretty awesome for Stacy his first bond issue.
I know.
yeah, I'll take full credit for that. It's all on me.
This is easy. I haven't been on one of the S&P calls in maybe 2 or 3 years, but the focus used to be, the worry was cash.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is there a worry now? Or
I wouldn't say there was a worry. There
with us,
were questions about it. Ryan, if you wanted to, chip in. But I mean, they see kind of where we're at. They did ask, S&P asked, I don't know that the investor did. So we've got this minimum cash requirement of 60 days. And in our projections, we're showing in the high 60s to low 70s. And they asked, do you think that actually could go up anymore? Or are you comfortable with it being there? And our answer to that was, yes, we are. We don't want to see it go too much higher, or we're not putting enough back into the classroom. We don't want to see it go too much lower, or we don't have enough cushion above that 60 to manage any unforeseen, downside events. So, Ryan, would you add anything to that?
No.
Great. Congratulations.
Thank you. So a little bit later, I think we'll talk about our.
So we'll talk about the budget when we get to action items.
Yep.
Okay. So we'll move on then, I guess, to the academic update.
Great.
Rich, I'll pull yours up
I think
in just a sec.
so we had an exciting month, this month of June. Just on slide 2, just things coming up ahead. In a few weeks, we'll be hosting all of our new teachers and new teacher training. So the school year is right around the corner. This is actually the busiest time of year for the teaching and learning team here at the central office. Just getting everything ready for the professional development for our teachers, especially our new teachers that are coming in. Our teachers will report back toward the end of the month in July, and right now all of our high school, middle school, primary school leadership teams are finalizing their strategic planning. If you turn to the next page, I'll talk about just a few things as it relates to just a high-level summary. A lot of you may know this from following the news and reading the paper. It has been a definite challenge with our new testing vendor, ETS, out of New Jersey, with our state testing, and the impact on us has been minimal compared to other districts. But we were hoping to have our 3rd, 4th, 6th, and 7th grade star data back with district comparisons, state comparisons for this meeting. But due to just the number of errors and challenges that they've had, they've pushed this out. So we should get that sometime during the 1st or 2nd week in July. So also,
Rich?
yes.
What if TEA just refuses to accredit those exams? Because if they say that they're not valid, then the data is completely useless. I mean, you can't even use it for benchmarks because we don't know what is right in there.
Yes, there's definitely been a lot of conversation about whether these test scores should be used to shape accountability. And there hasn't been a formal decision yet that the commissioners made. So we'll see. I know that there's been a lot of complaints from a lot of the bigger superintendents to TEA.
Well, is there a backup plan? So, end of course exam results, teacher evaluations on students, director
We would
evaluation.
still be able, from our performance pay system for our teachers and evaluate, we would still get raw scores. So we would still be able to calculate all of our typical teacher performance metrics. That's actually what we did with the math results when TA said, well, we're not gonna count the math results. We were positioned to be able to use those scores. But what would be a downside to us is we believe that some of our schools, hopefully all, but at least half of them are gonna come out of IR status with their performance this year. And that would basically mean that they would have to wait another year to remove that designation. So I think that is honestly a bigger morale and culture issue on those campuses we're gonna have to deal with, who've been like geared up that we did all the things we were supposed to do, and now the state's not counting the score. So that's a little bit more what's on my mind, but a great question. We hope they count.
We hope so too. I'm just thinking about schools like Pinnacle Heights,
Hampton
schools in Fort Worth,
Primary.
Hampton Primary. The math data, the growth that we saw looked great. They did pretty well in the 5th grade administration, so we're hoping that the 3rd and 4th grade administration, or in Heights Middle School case, the 6th and 7th grade administration would get them over the hurdle, because all signs pointed to their 5th and 8th grade data clearing that hurdle. So we'll see what happens, but we'll definitely keep this group posted.
And we can send out, since our next meeting is the end of August. Once we have it out of back and we understand what the state's doing, obviously it'll be in the newspaper, so you'll know at a high level what they're doing. We'll be able to email something out to folks.
Does everybody use ETS?
It's the state, it's the Texas Education Agency's vendor for the STAR test, so you have no other option. It's their.
It's a new vendor this year.
It's a
It
new
is,
vendor.
yeah.
There was Pearson before. This is a year of transition.
Is everybody going to continue to use them after all this?
It's not our choice. It's
Yeah.
literally Commissioner Morath's, and I don't know.
So he
I-
has
Yes,
decided.
Well, I think it's a multi-year contract.
I would think so. I
So,
can't imagine.
I mean,
it's-
the article in the paper today was talking about multi-million-dollar penalties.
Yeah.
Yes, but
Yeah, the rumors behind the scenes are that he's gonna invalidate the contract.
yeah,
and-
there's probably
and kick him out.
enough grounds to do that.
I can't imagine they would do that without the legislature.
Yep.
Yeah.
Moving on to kind of the next bucket, leadership development. Earlier this month.
Rich, before you move on, can you just clarify, because even in the reporting, I can't tell for sure, the status of the 5th and 8th grade STAR test?
So, a fifth and 8th grade are considered SSI years, part of the Student Success Initiative. If a student failed their original administration in March, we would find out in April. They would have a second chance to take it in May. And at the last board meeting, we did share out some of the results from the retake. But if a student failed it twice, they would go to summer school and take the 3rd chance test for the 5th and 8th grade at the end of summer school. That administration was canceled. So what we've decided as a group of managing directors was to, after summer school, go to a grade placement meeting and look at how they did on their first 2 STAR administrations. They did, most likely they did fail, but did they see any improvement? Looking at map data, looking at coursework, and there's a formal process that committees go through to determine grade placement. And so my sense is that those meetings have either wrapped up or will resume in the beginning of July for those students and families who did not get that 3rd opportunity to take that test when it was canceled.
There was some press around, some schools just then decided, oh, well, they don't have to take the 3rd test and we can decide what we wanted to in terms of grade placement. Let's just not have summer school anymore. And for us, we knew kids still have a learning need that needs to happen, so we're gonna have summer school regardless if they're taking a test at the end of it or not. They need the extra learning time.
Around leadership and development, we had 3 big signature events for our leaders, and it's just a very positive month in terms of leadership development for our group of leaders across the network, centrally as well as at the campuses. First, we had a curriculum day where on June 8th we brought in all of our leaders to go over some new rollouts of tools, as well as some professional development about IB. On the 9th and 10th, we had a Leadership Academy where we brought in 240 managers, directors, deans, leaders from across the network to do a 2-day conference-style setting, and we had over 30, 40 facilitators, and that was really well received. And this past weekend, we just got back from Deloitte University, and Carrie, I don't know if you want to talk a little bit about the experience that our leaders and
Sure,
you had.
if you would like me to. Part of Deloitte's National Corporate Responsibility Community Give Back Initiative, there's a number of programs, one of which is this Courageous Principles training. It was the brainstorm of one of our retired CEOs, and it focuses on adapting some of the leadership training that Deloitte gives our employees, our people, to the public education environment. And it starts Friday around noon and Friday early afternoon and runs through Sunday. And some of them are hosted at Deloitte University out at Southlake. And it's basically a leadership development program. And this program that Uplift attended, there were 195 participants. Almost half of those were from Sacramento City Unified School District from California. Uplift had a group, Grand Prairie ISD had a group, and there were Teach for America alumni. And there are a number of these programs. It's been going for 3 years. They've done 12 of these. Don Shelby,
Yes, Don
was the
Shelby.
keynote from Gates Foundation, was the keynote speaker Saturday night. And I think just from what I've heard, there's been a connection made here, and the program may grow significantly because of the relationship that's developing. So I think everybody had a good time and learned a lot.
Great time.
Networking and learning and having a good time.
So I want to thank Carrie personally for creating this opportunity. It was so neat for our school leaders to be together for 2.5 days, and not only was the content incredibly high quality and purposeful, our school leaders are always looking for ways to build their soft skills of their leadership in addition to their instructional leadership. But I had several comments on just the social and networking time to spend with one another, and then the way the classrooms were organized. They were half Uplift, half Grand Prairie ISD, so we had a chance to spend more time with our broader colleagues outside just the Lee partnership. And Deloitte has spent a lot of time being very thoughtful about how to create a really great experience for their people, and so our principals were completely spoiled. And I think everyone gained 5 pounds over this past weekend, so thanks, Carrie, for that too. It created treasure hunts around the hotel of different cities, and they're like special treat. And so you'd have school leaders who were like, I just went to X city and got whatever it was that was a special item. So it was just a really wonderful experience. And thank you, Carrie, for being willing to sit and have an adult beverage with me at the barn. Since our principals didn't want to, they wanted me there, but not actually interrupting their conversation.
Yeah,
So
I
Carrie
kept
was my
Yasmin
buddy.
off to the side so she wasn't interrupting the networking that was going on. But
Exactly.
Yasmin and Rich were there the whole time and were participating in the classrooms. I was a facilitator like I did one previous time, but I was with a group of principals from Sacramento. I learned a lot from them too. They have a tough district out there, so no, I think everybody had a good time.
Yes, thank you so much.
Thank you. Right. Turning to the next page, we have 2 doses of academic data to share. The first one is the K-8 MAP. That's our National Norm Reference Test. And a few highlights from this test. I made a point here. This is an area of success, but with a caveat. And it definitely hits on some of the themes that I've talked about this year. One of the great things is that we saw a 4% increase in the number of students who are reading at or above the national norm. And we finished the school year with 64% of our scholars doing math above the national, at or above the national norm, 64%. And then in reading, we went up 3%. And we're at a point where at the end of this school year, 61% are reading above the national norm. And that's a really great step in the right direction. But, and just a note of, just a key note here around our 8th grade, and this just speaks to just the strength of our continuum. By the time our students finish 8th grade, Again, remember that about 75% of this cohort started at Uplift as 6th graders. You're looking at a cohort that's going into our 9th grade where 73% are reading at or above the national norm. And so we're incredibly excited about just this, just kids that are ready for more rigor as they hit our high schools. The caveat is really around growth. And we did see a slight drop in the percentage of students who are meeting their growth, who didn't meet their growth targets. Each student has a growth goal that they need to hit. And one of the things that we found is that our growth went down in terms of the percentage of kids hitting their growth targets. What's happening is that the student below national norm, they're hitting their growth targets. The growth targets are not being hit at an equitable or higher percentage for the students above national norm. And that student population has grown at Uplift over the last few years. So we definitely need to be a little bit more cognizant of that. I think the strength in our academic model is moving kids below to national or slightly above. Now we need to get into the work of those that are here and moving them up into the top quarter nationally. And that's a little bit more challenging. And so we did talk about that challenge over our leadership gatherings. And our hope is that we're going to take a much stronger approach. We also have a couple of concern areas. Math overall, we saw some strides, but elementary performance in 2nd through 5th grade, we need to monitor that, particularly in reading. And so that's definitely going to be a focus that we're going to follow through with our curriculum team, our team of managing directors, and our primary directors.
Hey Rich, who sets those growth targets?
Those growth targets are set by a norm study from the 5 million students that have taken MAP over the last few years. There's a norming study that's done so that depending on where you score on the pretest, it'll give you a growth target that you would need to hit based on your national comparison group.
But then what we do is, historically, we're actually changing it going into this next year. But historically, what we've said is, if you are below the national average, we take whatever NWA spits out, which is basically kind of keeping you on pace with 1 year of progress, and we multiply it by 1.5 because of this notion of if you're going to close a gap, you need to accelerate growth faster than the growth an average student has or than the national average student has year over year. And then a child who's at or above, we say whatever the NWA score is, then that's what the target is.
And then the last bit of data is, really the most exciting kind of piece of data that we've received. We had our highest end of junior ACT scores that we've ever had, and this is with the addition of Heights in their junior class. So our composite score was a 21.4. Just as a reference, our seniors this past year that graduated finished with a 21.4. So our juniors finished at kind of the same academic standing as our seniors who just graduated. And they have fall and winter to retake any assessments. So we feel very hopeful that we would, again, the college readiness benchmark is at a 21, we're at a 21.4. We have a good opportunity to squeeze out another point or so and get into the 22, 23 range, which would be unprecedented and would be the first time that this happened. And just as a highlight, Heights, their first senior class that's moving up, they averaged a 20 on theirs, and traditionally some of our schools have scored in the very high teens, and so just very excited for Heights' first senior class. They performed remarkably well. All of our schools had a 2.5 gain or higher. We feel that we can finish the year with all schools above a 20, and so just really excited. We're definitely going to see a spike in the number of college-ready students that are going to be starting their college application process this fall.
Rich, can we examine that just a bit?
Absolutely.
These are very nice numbers, but I find myself a little in dark about knowing what we ought to be shooting for. When we have 55% college ready, 52% college ready, 48%, I don't know what our target is. What's success for us?
Yeah.
There's 18% at the state level.
No, I understand that, but I would never except that.
Well, of
being
course,
better
and
than
we're
the
not
state-
shooting for the state,
No.
part either, but just as a reference
No,
for
no,
you
no,
to get
I
that
do understand that,
number.
but what do we think success is? I mean, I would think 100% means we'd never grow. We'd have to spend every dime chasing that last percent. So what's acceptable? What's our target?
I think that's a great point. So one of the data points that you'll find if you get into the level of assessing what are the scores, where are our scholars going to college? I'll start with when we look at our college persistence numbers. If a student gets into a tier 1 college or university, they're persisting at over 90% year to year. And it looks very promising for that group. If they go to a second tier liberal arts college or state university, you're looking at 80%, and then it's actually very low for our students who start off at our 2-year community colleges. So to get into a tier 1 college or university, we found that our scholars need a score of a 23 or higher. So just looking at the data, I think it's about 50% of our students who get into those tier 1 schools, but about half of those choose, or half of those end up going to them freshman year. So I think we need to, that's why getting into that 22, 23 range is very critical, where our average is where our students could get into a top tier college and university through one of our MOU partnerships. So I would put our kind of our gold standard at a 23. We have a couple of schools that are there now, but really we want to increase the percentage of kids at all schools clearing that line. So that'll be some more data that we'll be sharing at the board retreat later on. But really we want to make sure that there's a very healthy percentage of kids that are above a 23 that are getting into those tier 1 schools. Where the scholarship offers are much more healthy, persistence is stronger, and that should really shape our 4 to 6 year graduation rates.
And what do you think is a healthy percentage? What would you like to see?
You know, I think it depends on the school, but I would love to see that number be at 60, 70% over the next few years. My sense is that if we squeeze another point or so in the fall administrations from this class, we'll probably be in the mid to high 50s. And then I think when I think about our rising, I showed the data from our rising 9th graders. If they hold firm, we should have about 70% of that cohort hit a 22, 23 or higher.
And what have been sort of individual top ACT scores, just out of curiosity?
We have some in the 30s.
The rumor is that we did have someone.
Thank you for asking, Mark.
I think there was a scholar who, the rumor was that we had a 32 at Williams.
Wow.
Yeah, so that's missing maybe one question or two.
So the
at
top score is a
Williams.
34.
Yeah, and so that was our highest score at Williams this past year. I think there were definitely some scores in the low 30s at North Hills, but.
And what kind of schools are those kids going to, or what schools?
Those students will.
I can answer that
Yeah.
very directly. So the top schools, Princeton, Harvard, Duke, Stanford, and so on, are looking at a range of 32 to 34, 35 as the average entering ACT school. But basically what that means is that's a student with no other bumps in their application, right? And they're very selective schools. We're lucky we have a lot of students with a lot of bumps in their application. They're first generation, are they applying under minority status? Are they in a partnership MOU? All these kinds of things that we have. So I think Rich is right, getting to the 25 to 27 range for a great number of students is going to get them into places like that.
And I was really pleased with where all of our valedictorians and salutatorians across all of the schools were going to. And we had just great schools that they were going into. We have Stanford and Notre Dame are the 2 places where the Williams team is going to. And so I can't remember every single pairing, but every single graduation, I just thought it was awesome to see where they had gotten in.
So it was a great year. We still have a point and a half to squeeze out and make sure all the schools are above a 20, and that'll be the focus of the work this fall. And additionally, this does reshape a little bit of our deans of college prep and the Road to College team's work, because there's just going to be a bigger group of students that are going to require a little bit more time and guidance But we're in front of that, and we'll be putting together some great plans for this rising group of seniors. Very excited for that. Any questions on the academic data before I go into a special report about social emotional learning?
Congratulations.
Our directors and teachers did a fantastic job this year. Great. So, and this connects with a lot of the thinking that we've been doing around what it takes for us, one of our students to persist through college. And we've spent a lot of time over the last few years talking about curriculum and assessments, data, and one of the things that we realize is that there's more that we need to do in terms of empowering our students with social emotional skills. Developing grit, perseverance, learning strategies to navigate their own learning, and being more autonomous as they go into college. At Uplift schools, there's a nice sheltered environment with great people that are, more or less hand-holding and providing a lot of direct support, and they lose that when they go to college, and we need to do a better job of scaffolding. How are they owning and becoming more autonomous young adults that are going to be successful year to year and make great decisions? And so, so one of the things that we decided to do was partner with an organization called Panorama. There are a couple of professors from Harvard that are working on this project. Essentially, they do student surveys. They ask them questions about school belonging, relationship with teachers, how they feel about their learning, how they feel about the comfort levels of going to a teacher to ask for support, all on these scales. And one of the things that we did is we gave it to over 8,000 students, 3rd grade to 12th grade, to unpack how we can start thinking about our long-term approach of developing these skills and mindsets for our students. So we did this in the winter, and each school received a snapshot of this data. And we definitely use the data in a lot of our presentations at Leadership Academy. And currently, there's a researcher at SMU who is taking that data set. We gave that survey by student ID. So, so one of the things that we could look at is how do kids who had this growth or kids who had this GPA, how did they feel in terms of their social emotional context? So one of the things that we're hoping for is just a little bit more focus as to how to best teach these skills for particular groups of students. So that white paper should be coming out later next month, early August, and Erin Hearn is taking the lead on that with our researcher from SMU, and Erin Hearn is the person who's leading this work. She just completed a graduate program at University of Pennsylvania studying under Angela Duckworth. You may have heard her. She wrote the book on grit and perseverance, and so we're just really incredible to have her leadership and resource to shape the development of next level culture, next level interaction, next level teacher training around this work. In the board deck, we talk. I mentioned a little bit about the 5 areas, and I won't go through them, but emotional regulation, learning strategies, grit, perseverance, and school belonging are the 5 things that we assessed. There are about 5 other things that we could assess, but we wanted to just focus on those 5. There were a couple of big conclusions. We have a lot of room for growth. More or less 50% of the students responded positively to the survey questions, which means that half of our students don't feel that they're in a place where that they do have these skills and qualities, and particularly around emotional regulation. And we might think about emotional regulation as the student who acts out. Part of, there are students who may not act out but might shut down internally. Those are students too who have a difficult time emotionally regulating, and maybe our teachers and our leaders might not be able to see that because more or less the student may seem compliant, but internally they feel that they're having a hard time managing through their school context. We also found that ELL and special education students scored a little bit lower than our norm set, so we need to think about how we can best support them. We think a lot about how to support them with academic interventions. We need to start thinking about their social and cultural context more actively using this data. If you flip over to slide 9 and 10, you see really just the kind of a snapshot, really the picture of favorable responses. A lot of these questions are given on a 5-point scale, so the percentage here is the percent of students who answered it at a 4 out of 5 or a 5 out of 5. And so this gives you kind of a cross map, and each school leader at our campuses, they have a tool where they could drill down by grade level, gender, ethnicity, and other demographic variables to better understand a grade level or some of the culture context that they have. This is definitely new work that we're headed into, but I think it's very exciting because this is a key slice of the pie that is going to help our students persist through college, and it is something that we have not actively focused on as well. And so really excited for this new focus. A lot of our leaders are having some really creative ideas around how to best teach this. Erin is putting together some modules for our leadership development over the course of this upcoming school year, for there to be more case study and learning around this. So we feel that this will be an academic driver in the long term.
Rich, just mention one other thing. So we actually have the opportunity to do a pilot with Momentous Institute with 2 of our primary schools, specifically on emotional regulation. So our primary schools are applying for it, where our teachers and our school leaders will get specific professional development about basically how to de-escalate and support high behavior need situations. It's actually very hard to find, I'm going to call these behavior specialist coaches, and they also are very expensive. If you try to either bring them in-house or even leave in specific situations, contracted out a couple of days of work, but really to go into a classroom and similar to how you would give instructional coaching to a teacher, give a teacher coaching on how to handle specific children's needs. And then the Fort Worth team, the 2 primary school leaders spent time with Cook's Children's in Fort Worth on Friday, learning about some research they've done around where are there high pocket areas where children are being maltreated, and which could be a range of high needs issues. And they basically said the Stop 6 area, where our 2 schools are, is one of their target spots in their analysis, which is they weren't surprised by some of the things we see in our schools, and they have some different community programs that they've given us access to as well. So this is really starting to get some traction in terms of how we leverage Erin's expertise in the work she's been doing, but also community partners who have expertise in this area as well.
Have you ever seen, and I think one of your Teach for America teachers was telling me about this, and I don't know whether it was done through Teach for America, but where an expert is in the classroom communicating.
Yes, the real-time coaching. That's basically what Momentous is going to do with those 2 pilot schools. But even
She said it was wonderful.
I can only imagine it's wonderful, because part of what our teachers tell us is when we do a general professional development on how to de-escalate behavior, it's helpful, but they're really want to know the specific child that I'm not able to reach right now who acts out in this particular way. And so to have another adult in the classroom who literally is in an earpiece saying, why don't you try X with this child right now to see if that works? And we have outside paid for someone to come in at Pinnacle. We tried this, I think at Pinnacle in Hampton last year, and I don't even want to, I'll cite wrong, like what the daily rate was of that person. And so, figuring out a way to train the trainer so we can have our dean of students play more of that role in our schools will be huge. And that's what we're trying to figure out with the Momentous pilot and some of the other things we're looking at is how do you build that capacity internally so we can reach more kids and teachers. It's very cool. I'm really excited about that opportunity.
All this sounds amazing. I'm just wondering, are there any linkages or is there any overlap between the social emotional learning and the IB program? I mean, to the extent that we've got multiple programs going on to be able to kind of synthesize it so that the teachers aren't like, trying to read off 12 different.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Erin, I know that you've done a lot of work on that. You want to just talk a little bit about just at a high level the cross mapping that you've done with a lot of the IB frameworks and the learner profile with some of the kind of the core tenets of social emotional learning.
Yeah, sure. So one of the continuums on the IB learning spectrum with all three programs is the approaches to learning, and it really identifies a variety of non-cognitive skills, such as being able to be reflective on learning, mindfulness, regulation. So what I did is I took that, which actually starts in kindergarten and follows the students through 12th grade, and they scaffold the development, IB scaffolds that development. I crossed that over with some of the fundamentals of social emotional learning. So where they talk about mindfulness, what they're really talking about is emotional regulation. So I tried to figure out what those cross vocabularies were, and they actually do merge really nicely. So when we talk about IB, oftentimes we're talking about the rigor and the transdisciplinary work, things like that. But inherent in the IB program is this SEL piece. So we have the ability to use the same vocabulary. Another element of SEL is character strengths. So how do we figure out what our students are already doing well and encourage them to do that more? And where that really comes across in IB is through the learner profile. So things like being outgoing and risk-taking and courageous is also a character strength which we want to mold and model with our students as well. So there's tons of overlap there. I think the nuance is just making sure that we're using the same vocabulary across both programs so that it seems like a cohesive push forward.
You won't see a SEL curriculum being rolled out and then an IB curriculum where it feels like two separate things.
Right.
Instead, it's basically, here's how you teach the IB traits with some additional resourcing. So it shouldn't feel separate to teachers at all.
I was curious to see the narrow range here of data across schools, and I wondered how that corresponded with the national norms in terms of percentiles. Is it a situation where like 5% equals 25 percentile points? And is that just a couple of questions answered a different way, moves our data up 25 percentile points or down 25 percentile points? How do I think about that?
Erin, I know that you spent a little bit more time on the data front. Do you want to?
Yeah, that's a great question. So the distribution curve for all of these constructs is actually pretty small. So a variance of 3 to 5 percentage points is actually pretty large on sort of like a national norm system. That being said, Panorama has only nationally normed their 6 through 12 data. So when you're looking at the primary, we're not really sure where they fit. What we see when we see our data and compare our schools to each other is even 5 percentage points can be a huge difference. So the questions that we asked, each construct has about 10 questions. So if a student, marks a couple down, it will knock down the percentage points pretty drastically. But at the same time, that 5% difference is a pretty big gap. So when I'm looking at things like the difference between, 35% and 48%, I would interpret that as a pretty big difference in emotional regulation for our students.
Okay. And these percentages again are students answering 4 or 5
Yes.
to, and then how many, so could you help me understand how many questions that would correspond with?
Yeah,
Like,
so
is it just 2 questions answered as a 3 instead of a 4 can make 25 percentile?
what it is, yeah.
Yeah.
So each scale has about 10 questions. It's a 5-part Likert scale, so totally disagree to totally agree. So the average is factored by the number of responses in 4 and 5. So I can't do the math that quickly in my head, but if you hit, if you're mostly 3s, you're going to show up as not answering favorably. But I think like whatever the ratio is, and I can figure that out for you.
Okay.
So that to you, Josh.
Cool, thanks.
So I think this is a fantastic idea, but to me, I kind of always think of everything inside the classroom, right, outside the classroom, and then what are these kind of extra pillars that can be put around this, because it's so difficult to turn a ship. Absolutely. And you're banking on the teacher, they're already doing so much. Just seems really wonderful, but very overwhelming at the same time. And so how can, I remember at, because I've only been at Hampton, that we used to have a school counselor. So as a part of this, are we reintroducing school counselors, or are we somehow connecting sports or team-oriented things, and whether that's extracurricular? How are we, I guess, informing those adults, teachers, coaches, even parents, and kind of giving this a well-rounded, comprehensive approach to this?
Coaches is an awesome example, and I don't know if we've thought about what our coaches PD looks like on this, so we're gonna take that down, because that's a great suggestion. Our social counselors, we every year have added to our social counseling staff, so every campus has a social counselor. Some actually have one for primary and one for secondary, and they push into classrooms every other week or on a monthly basis, and literally will be tweaking their lesson plans based on this data. So they are a critical component to delivering the SEL piece. It's not just the teachers, it's the deans, the school leaders, and the social counselors as well. And then at an individual school level, we'll figure out what is the parent piece. For schools who already have a connection with Concilio, Avance, it's easy to plug this in. What we were talking about in Fort Worth is actually they're trying to start a campaign in Stop 6 that this is a no hitting space, because what they were saying is that physical violence for children in our area is 3 times the state average, and a lot of times children are using physical actions towards each other because that's what they're seeing at home. And so literally designating our schools, obviously, but even with kids hitting each other, no hitting zones, getting signs for parents in the yards who are willing, and getting parents almost as a VIP parent-led group activity to take on the campaign for our Fort Worth schools. So there will definitely be a parent component. I don't think you're gonna see a consistent same thing network-wide, because it's so community and community partner specific, as you will see with our counselors and with our teachers. But the idea of making sure we're giving this professional development to our coaches so they reinforce it in terms of our athletics program is great.
Once you start getting this out more fleshed out, we share this with the campus advisory chairs, because this could be a way where we could work with our individual teams, have school community, school culture, and really say, we're going to focus on this component as a support network for that time. So share that out, please.
Sure.
Definitely do that, especially once the kind of the white paper project is complete after the summer. I think there are going to be some findings that are going to surprise us, especially when we look at what is the relationship between the data and markers of success as it relates to GPA and test scores growth. And I think really Don, I think there's this kind of learning and awareness that we're working on right now. And then I think the next level is findings. And once we are clear on the findings, then we need to start mapping out how are we going to trickle it down to our leaders, teachers, and families in our communities. And so this is kind of a new process. So we're taking the slow rep, just because it is something that we do need to get right, especially on the initial rollout of this one. Yeah, all the other are appendix type data. If you want to follow up on a school, if there are any questions that you have about a school or a division grade level, I'd be more than happy to take that question after our board meeting.
I'm sorry, just one piece of analysis that might be interesting is to see what schools' recent trends have been and how they map against what their scores were, to see if like there's any correlation between performance and what people are self-reporting as, I'm pretty or I'm not.
Yeah.
I don't know if maybe you've done that.
So that's the analysis that's being done at SMU right now.
Okay.
So we'll be in a position to share that in about a month or so. But it's a crazy data set, because you're looking at almost 8,000 students. They took questions in 5 different kind of areas, and then their academic growth, performance, gradebook data. And so it is a massive set that they're trying to do these correlation analysis. So we're really excited about the findings.
Thank you, Rich. I think we're going to probably switch, because I don't know how long the action items are going to take, and we have a lot of things we need to vote on while we have a quorum. So why don't we move into that part of our meeting, and we'll start with the 2 budget approvals, Stacy. So if you want to review those first, and then we'll have the votes.
To describe it again for why we do it.
Yes. So you may have sort of
Since we have guests in the room.
shake your head a little bit about, we're at the very end of our 2015-16 school year, and we are putting in front of you another budget for 2015-16. The note on slide 4, we kind of tried to explain this, but I'll just sort of highlight that, is that we, whenever everything is all said and done, the audit is done, and we send that off to the TEA, and the audit includes a comparison of what was your budget to your actuals. You are required to explain any variances that are 10% or greater on the expense side. And so knowing that, and knowing that the TEA also basically allows you to adopt the budget at any point throughout the year, all year long, that you would kind of want to minimize your work as it relates to explaining any variances by adopting a budget at the end of the year that matches as close as you think you can get to what actuals will end up being. And so we're putting both of those together. This is a very common practice. It's not Uplift's figured something out. It's just pretty common practice to adopt a budget near the end of the year that reflects what we think where actual expenses will end up. And so that's what we've put before you in two forms, actually. You've seen on slide 4, this is kind of how we present the budget for you when it's originally adopted, broken down by how we look at and think about and manage the business. And then slide 5 is just another look at the same information presented in functional format. And this slide 5 is actually how we are required to present our financial data in our audited financial statements. So the functional look at expenses, what goes in here and these functions are defined by TEA, and so we sort of mandated what you would code into what function and what expenses you classify which way. And so as we want to familiarize you more with kind of when you're looking at the audit later this fall and reflect back to the budget that budgets we have adopted, this is what it did look like. So the numbers look fairly similar to what you've seen, what we saw in the May preview to where we thought the year would end up, with a highlight that we believe we'll recognize a little bit more in local revenue, and a little bit less in federal revenue, still netting out to a much more favorable than original budget performance. So any questions about all that?
If there's not questions, do we want to go ahead and vote on 15-16 first? So
I move we approve the amended budget for 2015-16.
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, thank you.
2016-17 budget that is before you is in the package is identical to, in most respects, I believe, very minor tweaks, if any, from what you saw in May. So we've given you what the 2016 original budget was, this new budget, and then the 17 budget, and the various variances and differences and other metrics. So I don't want to spend much time going through this. We've had it in pre-read now for 2 meetings, but happy to take any questions.
Okay. Questions on 16-17? Okay. If not, I'll entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Thank you. Thank you, Stacy.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. And with that, we'll turn it over to Ann to discuss the bylaw changes.
Yes, we have just a couple of changes to the bylaws. You got the whole restated bylaws in the pre-read, but there's only a few changes that we're actually requesting, and one is in section 4.3. 2.2, which is to basically change a little bit of language to say that when a person is elected as a trustee, they will serve an initial term up to 1 year, because we're trying to align everybody sort of ending their terms at the same time, so we can keep track of it more easily. So that is the one, basically the major change, so it just simplifies our start and end dates for tracking terms. And then there are some other changes in sections 2, 4, 5, and 6, where we were just cleaning up a little bit where we had the term director, which should have been trustee. And I think the rest of it, I have Bryce, who's come back to the board, and he helped with these bylaws, wrote these bylaws many years ago, and we're still using them, but tweaking them just a little bit. Keep trying.
I thought it was a good tweak on the terms, and you know, I will say this: we kind of take our governance committee and our bylaws and everything for granted, and I don't think it's normal.
You busted that firsthand.
I've got, well, one of the things I've done the last year is with some other large charters, sharing where they book, and they want to know what our bylaws are and how our committee structure works, and it made me realize that what I take for granted, you know, others really aren't there yet. So thank you for all you guys work on this. Are there any questions on the changes to the bylaws? It's pretty straightforward. If not, could I have a motion to approve?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Great. Thank you, everyone that helped out with the changes. That takes us to ARTA and elections, which kind of bleeds into governance and generally the update, how we break up this meeting when we do the voting. Arlo and I were talking about beforehand, but I'll let you take it away.
Sure. So each of you should have ballots. At this point, if you don't, please feel free to grab one from Ann. So today we're doing the elections of officers and board members. Interestingly, we have several new governors who will be on for the first time, voted on. Jack Wessinger, Don Mann, and myself. And we actually have a couple of trustees who will be on as well for the first time, that being Colin Clark and Ed Tariak. Kerry Carter has been here before, and he rolled off for about a year, and now we're voting him on to be a trustee again. So with that said, we have our ballots there to do the vote today, but before we move into that, I do want to recognize several individuals who have are rolling off from their term limits. These individuals are Michael Giles, Marnie Wildenthal, and Shrinkanth Srinivas. And so with that said, I think there's a couple of individuals who would like to recognize several of you for all your efforts and show our appreciation.
I would. I know particularly I'd like to speak to Shri to start with, because Shri and I started about the same time. I think you were here a year ahead of me, so you were always so welcoming, and I really appreciated that. And I think you've been that way to everyone. Your service has been very active. You've been a great participant in the meetings. I know that you've been involved with helping a little bit with Summit and North Hills and et cetera, but IT and most recently advocacy, bringing Matt Rinaldi to our campus there. And I just wanted to say thank you very, very much for all you've done. And I think we've got a little something for you. And I know that you're willing to help us continue with advocacy, so you're not going very far, I know. Thank you very much.
Some of the best strategic questions as well, as I was going to
strategic plan, yeah.
Thank you so much. I think it's been so heartwarming to see this organization grow so much. It's really heartwarming. The number of students we had is less than the number of teachers we have today. And it's amazing. Yeah, and each year we grow more than what we were all total for the first 10 years. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. And Michael, I could say a few words about you, and you predate me, and you were instrumental in the formation of Summit Preparatory. In addition to that, you were kind of one of the gold standards in terms of being a local board chairman. You were fabulous chairman of the governance committee. And as I understand it, even though you're rolling off the board, you're going to stay active in the governance committee, which is a great gift. And so you've done all these roles, and you've done them all really well. But when I think of you, I think of you having maybe the calmest demeanor of any board member I ever worked with. And there's been a couple times when I've been able to bounce stuff off of you, and you're always an open door to talk, but you're such a great advisor and counselor. And I really personally, the organization appreciates you. I personally appreciate you. Also, you're the holder of the secret. My most embarrassing moment as a board member happened when I was visiting one of your board meetings, and I'm horrified to this day. But anyway, so thank you for your service. Thank you.
So I also want to say a few things about Michael. And so one of Michael's board responsibilities, for some of you who were on board when I joined as a very young, experienced leader, was to be my executive coach. And Michael spent countless hours role-playing conversations with me, and I learned so much from it. And as some people know, my first 2 years I had to make lots of staff changes, and I had no experience in that. And you taught me something that I literally keep to this day, which is, as long as I had honest conversations in a respectful and compassionate way, that I could handle any of those conversations. So thank you so much for everything you've taught me.
So I get the pleasure of saying something about Marnie, who I have known personally for, let's see, my son is, how old is he? 25 years I've known Marnie. And I've known her as an educator supreme. She's totally aware of academic trends and has been in the community at large, and certainly you are our Uplift academic guru, so we rely on you. I know you've also been really involved with Deborah in terms of fundraising and helping us make contacts and open the community up so that we all have been able to broaden knowledge of who Uplift is and obviously additional resources. You're always at board meetings, unless you're in Europe someplace, having a fabulous time. You've really gone so far in terms of your personal commitment, in terms of tutoring kids at Heights, and that's a passion I know that you have, and also working at the library there and making sure to get books that some of the kids want. So we thank you so much for your many, many years of service. I know that you're going to continue as a tutor and working in the library and also being on the Heights Council. So yeah, you're not going anywhere. Thank you.
Uplift Heights in the middle school, and one of our scholars came up to me and was very worried because Marnie had not been by to see him recently for their one-on-one tutoring, and so you are known as a regular figure on that campus. And while Melissa did speak to the support you've given us in development, we literally would not have one of the most meaningful gifts to our organization if it wasn't for you. So thank you so very, very much. Thank you.
Well, I would just say my greatest contribution, my earliest memory of being on the board of Uplift was being part of the group that selected Yasmin to succeed Rosemary. And and that has remained a proudest moment. Good judgment.
The next item I want to mention too is there's been some changes at the chair level, and Tony Donna will be rolling off as chair, and Melissa McNeil will be coming on, and in place of vice chair will be Ryan Moss. So I think, Tony, there's some words that we'd like to express for you as well.
Boy, I sure want to start. This guy has been so excited the last couple of meetings. But seriously, there's a lot to say about Tony, and I'll start with 5 years of commitment, leadership commitments. 3 years as vice chair, and then 2 as chair. And 5 years is a long time to stay with me. To have meetings with Yasmin, who talks very fast. At any rate, I just commend your warm and welcoming style, which to everyone who knows you, you walk in the door, and then if you're a new person coming in, whatever, you're always so welcoming, as I say, with a great smile. You're thorough in everything you do. You read every bit of paperwork that comes, and you are very careful and intuitive about how you approach issues, and I think that's exceedingly important. You're very succinct, but you're also very eloquent, and that's a talent that most of us don't have. You have fabulous sound judgment on critical issues. And we've had some difficult times and some good ones. One of the things that I really, really like about you is that you write incredibly wonderful emails to staff and faculty in hard times and in good times, with all of the work that was happening down at Pinnacle, the main problem that we had. After that whole event was over, you wrote the most striking email to the faculty and staff saying how important the work is that they do, and that even though there are naysayers out there, we are proud, and you are proud of them, and that was so important. And then, of course, the next one that he wrote was right after college signing day. It was like this huge, yay, you guys did it, and what a great team you are that you could pull this off and make it look effortless, which the team does, but you recognize it took a lot of effort. At any rate, you've been the face of the board for us, but also the community, and also the other charter schools around the state. And that's something that we never hear about, but he's always communicating with these people, and that takes a lot of time. At any rate, you're very involved with advocacy, and I know you'll stay that way with us. And that's a critical thing that we need to be focusing on this coming year. And I think that also, we're not going to let you rest on your laurels, because you won't. He is stepping up to be the chair of the council at Heights, which is fabulous, and we're very, very pleased about that. So taking over as Jack moves into a different position. So my only concern is that you still have time to maybe play a round or two of golf. Okay.
I will. That's where I'm headed right after this meeting, actually.
So thank you.
I have to get this straight. Do you want to speak first?
Oh, no, go ahead. I'll
Okay.
say something.
Okay. So I just want to reinforce Melissa's point around staff, and particularly leader appreciation. Tony has literally written notes to our principals for National Principal Appreciation Month. He has showed up at Uplift League with cupcakes and popsicles to acknowledge to the staff how hard the partnership work is. There's just been so many times he has outreached to our staff to let them know how appreciated they are. And I know it means so much to them, and it means so much to me personally for his partnership on that. And part of the role of board chair is he's my first phone call with the messy stuff that happens in our organization. And what I've always appreciated is that Tony is so balanced. He always has sound advice for me, and he's also encouraging and supportive. And the first question is, how can I be helpful? And that just has meant a ton. gift, we have an engraved pen for you to commemorate your time as chair. And that's from Uplift. And this is from me, because I think it's really important to know what makes your board chair happy. So this is a really nice bottle for you. You'll enjoy later.
Well, this is wonderful. I don't like the spotlight, so I'll be brief, but I'm honored to have had the chance to be board chair these last 2 years, and I learned a lot more than I contributed, and I am in awe of our teachers and our staff, the CMO, and I'm in awe of Yasmin. I tell everybody, you know, most of y'all know this, you do not for profit volunteering, and sometimes the administration is, you know, maybe different than what your work life is like. And I always tell people, Yasmin's so much more talented than I am. It's just so great to get to be her board chairman. So I'm excited that, you know, Melissa's going to be chair next. I'm excited that Ryan's the next chair in waiting, and we have a great board here. And so thank you, everybody. It's been a blast. We've gone from like 5,000 to 15,000 since I've been on the board, so I feel very lucky. So thank you.
On the board pre-read, by the way, you'll see that there are the bios for the trustees and governors. So I would encourage you just to take a look at it briefly, because you'll see that a lot of these individuals have achieved a lot of great things throughout their careers and lives. It's pretty impressive. With that said, just like to say the governance committee is nominating this slate for vote, and I would like to make a motion that this slate be considered.
Do we need to physically fill out the ballots and hand them to you, Ann? How are we supposed to do this?
I think since we've done it, yes, we should have everybody fill them out. It was a good idea here to say what the trustees vote on and then what the governors vote on. So, yes, if you just mark them for, against, or abstain, and
Send them over to you.
send them over to me, I'll do the secret count.
So am I still a governor, or am I like?
Yeah, you still are.
Okay.
You are today.
All right, good, because I already checked all the boxes.
We've got about 30 minutes left now.
What's that? So do we want to, while we send the ballots in, do you have anything else you need to cover, Arda?
I'm sorry?
Do you have anything else to cover while people do the ballots?
Just to know that we are really actively looking to formalize and have everybody set up in terms of the campus advisory chairs. We're working on that, and it's something that we have to look forward to and sharing with you at the next meeting. We have in place some impressive individuals at the CAC level, and we look forward to sharing with you the new individuals who will be assuming those roles. So stay tuned.
Okay, thank you. Yasmin, do you want?
I just want to mention that Ardo also handed out this board member consent authorization for release of information. The TEA, the law requires us to do a background check on our board members to ensure that they're qualified to serve. And we're supposed to do that every 3 years, so part of our sort of tightening up all our deadlines is you will include this, and we'll get this back. We have some extra ballots.
Do we want to go into strategic plan while we finish the ballot?
Oh, the other, do we have any other authorization?
I think a few other folks are just filling them out.
Okay, yeah, I didn't know if we had a blank form. Richard said he was not.
Are there any more questions? Is that what you're looking for?
Yeah.
Arno?
I'll give them one after.
Okay, cool. Thanks. Great, also, while final forms are heading into Anne, I am excited to give an update on our strategic plan work that we've been doing since the last, our board retreat. Now we're coming on 10 months of being in this journey. The last time we had a meeting was in February on this topic, and the board gave guidance to really get more specific around Fort Worth and what that could look like to dive deeper, to making sure that we were deeply engaging the community, and also to blend in together our internal investments as well as our external investments in this next strategic plan. And so we have been very active in the Fort Worth community. In fact, 2 foundations came together and hired a former pastor to work on local community engagement and advocacy on behalf of recruiting more high-performing and high-quality charters to come to Fort Worth. And he literally is at full-time supporting, recruiting, and advocating on behalf of Uplift. And so it's really wonderful being able to go into a community meeting, having someone who is known to the community in a broader setting. Our real estate broker is actively looking at sites. We don't have anything to bring forward yet, but we hope by end of summer, early fall, we'll have a couple of potential real estate sites for the first 2018 opening of a school in Fort Worth. We've spent time with the mayor's office, and she continues to be supportive of our expansion efforts. And I would say Deborah and I are probably in Fort Worth 2 to 3 times a week right now, and having just lots of meetings, whether it's with Cook's Children's or it's with actually a local Fort Worth ISD principal, and just seeing a local school that's considered high performing in a different part of the town than where we've been operating schools. So really trying to take the next 18 months to go through again a deeper understanding of that community. So what really we'd like to do right now is go through the high-level points of the plan. It was in your pre-read, so I'm not going to go page by page because I want to leave time for you all for any discussion. It would be really helpful to get any big picture guidance or input of where you'd like to see adjustments, because while you will officially vote on this at the August board meeting, Deborah and I have a list of donors who are anxiously awaiting for us to formally put time on their calendars so we can be on their fall foundation board agendas in order to meet our timing of us trying to secure budgets before we would close on any new pieces of property. And so it's just helpful to know if there's any major shifts in plan from what we've laid out. I definitely want to make sure that those are captured, so that way when we get to August, we're all very, very solid. But this should be aligned to what we've been talking about over the past 10 months. So I'll start here with this first slide because I think it's pretty important that our strategic plan has 3 overarching themes. The first is the internal investments in our people, our schools, and our systems. And obviously one of the biggest investments we've made towards teacher retention was our work with Bellwether that we did, not just the compensation piece, but overall recognition programs. And then really want to commend Rich for the work he's been doing on finding and identifying high quality teacher pipeline programs, whether they're partnerships with local universities or through external partnerships that we are recruiting to Dallas-Fort Worth for the first time. And there's a second partnership similar to Urban Teachers that we're working on right now to secure. And in the appendix, you could actually see an example for Fort Worth of what we could see long term, a mix being of how teachers are coming into our network in a sustainable way that also is a really high quality way. The second part of the platform is serve more children in educationally and economically underserved areas, with really the core part of that work and the delivery on our Department of Ed Charter Expansion Grant that we received, the $10 million grant, being at 8 schools in Fort Worth over the next 6 years. When we show the list of schools, you'll see the final high school comes a year after the plan, when they have ninth graders in it. But also the expansion of our Grand Prairie ISD partnership. During this planned period, the current children at Uplift Lee will be ready for middle school. And so it is very much the intention of the district right now, the intention of Uplift, that we will serve the children in middle school. So we still have a couple of years to figure out what school that looks like, if they're middle schools that the children will flow to, but that's also really exciting. And then also a part of this is continuing to find opportunities to expand pre-K. And we're doing a really neat partnership in Fort Worth this upcoming fall, where we're actually blending funding between state funding and Head Start funding to offer a full-day pre-K classroom in Fort Worth. And Ann and I were just meeting with Child Care Associates in Dallas, and they are very interested in watching how that works to see if we can convert over some of our Dallas classrooms with Child Care group to follow a similar model and offer full-day pre-K in a sustainable way. And then expand innovative collaborations. We wanted to continue to keep seeking out ways that we can provide partnership opportunities and work together for the broader good of our community. So a meeting that Rich and Deborah just had today with Grand Prairie ISD is we will be partnering with Grand Prairie High School, and we'll be supporting their seniors this year on some Road to College programming that Dr. Hall was very interested in. And so that doesn't involve a new school and facility, but instead is how can we share knowledge and expertise. Uplift is also one of the founding partners, along with 4 other traditional school districts, in launching the Principal Impact Collaborative, where we have a group of 13 experienced principals who are going through a 2-year professional development program on design thinking and how to work in cross-network and district teams on a big idea and a project that can help move the needle on their campus. So we are constantly seeking out ways that we can work together with others. So I'll pause there for a minute on our 3 overarching themes to see if there is any feedback or guidance on those themes. Is there anything we're missing?
No, it's right on. It's exactly who we are and where we should go.
It was interesting, one of our donors on this 3rd point, who's been a long time foundation for Uplift, said, this is the moment we've been waiting for, where your scale is allowing you to have credibility to do these kinds of partnerships and have impact in addition to new students that you only serve, spreading that to others. And that was really kind of a neat perspective to hear.
To me, the growth is still impressive, but it feels more relaxed than maybe what it felt like 5 years ago because of our infrastructure. And I love the collaboration. And I spent a couple hours with our teachers out at Lee, and the thing that was so neat that I took away from that conversation is how complimentary they were of the Grand Prairie ISD teachers and how they felt like the co-learning was so great. And then I see that, and I see the things we're doing with Momentous and with other groups, and I just think it's great that we have tentacles out, that our growth isn't just head count, but is also having more impact in the education community. So I think it's a wonderful plan. Thank you for those of Christine and others who have worked so hard on it.
OSA has been a big factor as well, and OSA actually went on a road trip with our broker and spent a couple hours in Fort Worth looking at sites.
Really?
Yes. So
This is a real estate person.
Now we're bringing her on board. So I touched on most of these things, but really, equally important, as is the growth and collaboration, is our internal investment. And so the big goals of this program from the internal investment side is seeing the real gains that we hope to make on teacher and staff retention, improving college persistence. We have some really neat new, what we're almost calling 2.0 alumni support programs that very few people are doing that we want to test out. One of them is actually staffing one of our Road to College colleagues at a four-year institution that's local, and it's where we have a high concentration of kiddos. So we can see what happens when we provide support on site. And what does that look like, and not just for what some people will do to make sure there's a strong freshman connection, but actually all the way through to completion. And if we see that works, then we'll replicate that. And then
What school was that, or is it?
we haven't finalized
Okay.
it yet. We have a couple in mind, but it's really making sure that the college commits to it. So those conversations are taking place.
Because when you
right
went
now.
to the graduations, you saw a couple schools that had a really heavy
Yes,
concentration.
yes. So we're basically talking to those, because what we want is we have an equally excited partner on the higher ed side as well. And then something we've been talking about with Amy is how to leverage corporations like Pizza Hut, who are good corporate citizens, to broaden the career awareness. So we do a great job of helping kids be aware of different colleges, but how can we broaden their exposure to various careers? And we're excited about sharing more of what that programming could look like early this fall. And then increases in college readiness. As Rich shared, we have a very deep push on social emotional learning, inclusion, and equity to complement our push on having at least 5 Uplift high schools be diploma program at the end of this period. And I apologize, there was an article that I was going to send to you, so I'll send it as a follow-up to this meeting. IB actually did a national study and found that low-income children who had gone through the diploma program graduated from college, 72% graduated from college. The graduation rate for the top quartile of household incomes in the country is 70%. So to know that basically any child who graduates with the diploma program in 11th and 12th grade is seeing persistence at that level is huge. And I really think that's going to differentiate us. We've already been differentiated on 100% college acceptance, and now we really want to be differentiated on our persistence rates even greater. So I wanted to go a little bit deeper on our internal investments, because they are as equally, if not more, important. And are there any questions on?
The only question I have is in the first item, we're talking about systems. Are there any system initiatives? I don't really know if I can see it on the right-hand side. Are there any system initiatives? I know we went through a bunch several years ago, but are there any others that are on our table?
I would say the couple are really on the central office side. So given that we're having some new staff members brought on the accounting side of Stacy's team, making sure that all of those systems and processes are tight. We've also added people to Diana's HR team. We probably had underinvested in that area, and then strengthening our recruitment team as well. Those are the 3 departments in the CMO outside of the systems pieces around instruction and SEL that we talked about that just need its next level of evolution.
With regard to the innovative collaborations and working with other charters and ISDs, have we kind of just given up on Dallas ISD?
No, so I haven't, but when I went around after the Pinnacle situation, and first of all, I offered to any trustee that I would be happy to sit down with them and share the work we're doing in Grand Prairie and just hear, were they open to any form of collaboration? It does not have to involve buildings, right, which is the very emotionally sensitive topic. And I only had 2 respond back to me. And both of them are incredibly supportive of Uplift, but both said, there's no way that there's the political vote to do anything, like not even share our Road to College material. They said that you just don't have the political vote. I will tell you that in Fort Worth, some of the community members are opening doors to what I'll call the kind of neighboring Fort Worth ISD, kind of like a Grand Prairie, the Grand Prairie of Fort Worth. And there's many of them. There's actually 13 small ISDs surrounding Fort Worth ISD. And I've had 1 meeting so far, and there's a couple of others planned to see, can we get a similar sized district like Grand Prairie ISD in Tarrant County that is interested in doing something similar over the next 5-year period, not next year, but starting to build that relationship up. And the thought is that they're, I just don't even know, in Fort Worth ISD, we're going to look for ways of collaborating, but probably on sharing and bringing new human capital pipelines to the table. Again, we have a new superintendent. Not sure this is the time they're going to take a vote on a joint school. But it doesn't mean we won't have conversations.
And one of the Board of Trustees' a grandson's enrolled in Meridian in kindergarten. And fortunately, at the graduation, Andre recognized her and called her out and said, welcome, and we want to be sure, and said, good morning. And so we have, so there's obviously some, support there.
That's good. That's a good question.
That's a great question, yeah. So then if we, this is just all the detail you saw, you can basically see the growth in number of scholars by 2021. We're going to put this in perspective because I fell off my chair. So our colleagues at Idea Public Schools, who are definitely more aggressive, and that's awesome. They are doing great things for kids all across the state. They've announced they're going to get to 100,000 students across the country. They're going into 7 new markets by 2020.
That's not relaxed.
No.
That's great. So our plan is really conservative, relatively speaking. So that is just a little bit of context there. Just as a reminder, in terms of the timeline for new schools, so this upcoming school year, that's going to be here in like 6 weeks, which none of us can really believe, on August 9th. We'll open Uplift Pinnacle Middle School, which, as most of you hopefully remember, is being incubated for a year while their building's under construction in Uplift Gratis on the 2nd floor. And then Uplift Grand High School, the new Uplift Grand classroom building opens up, and we'll have 9th graders for the first time, which is so awesome. So they are technically our 2 new schools, the 66 children at Pinnacle Middle School, and then the 9th graders at Grand. So, we talked about having the first 2 years of the plan be very slow and tempered while we make sure we have all the systems in place and the high quality teacher pipelines, and we see our retention efforts hopefully pay off. Then in 2017-18, we'll have 1 primary school that will open up, and that is the feeder to Uplift Luna. And then 2018 really kicks in the major investment in Fort Worth. And what we want to do is similar to what we talked about we did when we went into Fort Worth, put a cluster of schools together so that way you create community and close collaboration. And so we're currently looking at properties in the Stockyards area to put 2 small primaries and a middle school opening. And then in 2019-20, Uplift Pinnacles Middle School will have high school for the first time, so in that building they'll have 9th graders, and then another small cluster. It could be Las Vegas Trails for those of you who are familiar with Fort Worth, the Forest Hills area. That's where we're looking at property right now. And then in 2021, that first cluster of Fort Worth schools will have 9th graders for the first time in their building. So it will not be a new building that's opened up, but rather 9th graders joining it, and the following year, the 2nd cluster will have 9th graders. I just have to say our Fort Worth funding community is so excited, and they're excited about Uplift's plan, and they are actively recruiting 2 other high-performing charter networks to come in as well. And really, as the mayor's office said, we're a large city that does not have robust choice, and we're one of the only large urban cities that does not have robust choice, and we believe fully that we can support the superintendent and we can support scaling up choice for all families. So that was really neat to see. So any questions on what is the plan we're working under?
This is probably getting way too far ahead, but
It's okay.
I guess, is there a high-level plan to make sure you and other senior staff and
Yeah.
as we grow into Fort Worth?
So we actually, as an E-team, have started putting together, we have to spend more time on it, what would a CMO office space look like in Fort Worth with CMO staff that are really focused there. We want to be obviously really fiscally prudent of what does that look like. But what was really interesting is that there's a local university that's thinking about using some of their land for some education reform office space, and TFA is thinking about having a small Fort Worth team also there, and so we might jointly go in together on some, not the same office space, but in the same building, which would be really neat. So yes, we are thinking very clearly about that. Right now, Deborah and I are on autopilot to Fort Worth. My team knows like half the time I'm on phone calls, I'm on a drive to or from Fort Worth, and that's all good. It's super fun. I love Fort Worth.
The TRE runs 6 days a week.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's super cool, and you can rest and read. And
I need to do that.
Exactly.
So we will fill this out in August. It was a little hard to set specific metrics. One, we haven't seen the July retention numbers yet, which is contracts for ISDs for their staff are due July 11th on whether or not you're returning or not. That's always where we see the potential dip when they come after our teachers who are not contract. So we need to wait till that end of August board meeting to actually share with you academic metrics once we've seen all of STAR data and then our retention data. And then I just think this is interesting. These are rough numbers right now, but when you add up the investments we'll be making internally or that we've already made, just for the internal investment of our plan, it's almost $10 million. And that's only counting this year's teacher compensation increases. So as we choose to pull other levers to continue to close the gap, that number could go up. And then a $31 million investment for the external growth plan. Something that's really interesting about this campaign versus our past campaign is while we've historically raised funds for the operating deficit for our schools, we actually have added a component to take down the debt that we need, because we're very cognizant of our total debt that we have right now. And so a third of the campaign is actually debt for each school, and that's really nice because then on an ongoing basis that reduces our debt service, so it's kind of a gift that keeps on giving.
So equity to reduce the debt by
we
school.
literally would take out less of a bond package through that amount, and we've been very specific as we've been putting together material for donors of when that would need to be pledged and secured, so we literally wouldn't take out that amount in the bonds. And that's been positively received. And then we have a human capital investment also for pipeline, which we've also never explicitly called out before. We know that our pipeline work will be self-sustainable in year 5. So we literally have what's the cumulative 5-year investment to make sure that our schools have high quality teachers from the start and in the early years of the school, and then obviously supported on our own throughout. So that's been really interesting, and it's brought our cost per new Uplift school to be about $2.8 million, where historically we've gone out and fundraised 2.5. So that's just a little bit of the big picture there. Any questions on any part of the plan or any guidance for us? Deborah and I literally are going to take this and create an external facing plan, an internal plan to share with staff when they come back at the start of the school year. Obviously, we'll start setting up donor meetings as well.
It's exciting. Any feedback now, or actually any time between now and August?
Yes, yes.
Anything else now for Yasmin?
You were going to say no to Fort Worth. I need to know right now. You're going to come with me to some very awkward conversations.
But you have a much expanded donor base.
It's actually really exciting to see, and as Deborah and I shared from day one in Fort Worth, and I know Kathy, you probably see this, the Fort Worth donors are just different in the way they interact with one another than the Dallas foundations. I mean, literally this morning I was at a 2-hour meeting where the large donors are all around a table, and they decide topics they want to learn about together. So I was presenting on a topic, and then they all go around the table and share what investments they're making in that topic area, and then have a discussion about how they can all invest in common things to maximize the impact of their giving. Maybe that exists. They're highly coordinated. They all happen to love Uplift, which is great. And so it's a fun group. It's a fun group to be around.
And how many entities
There were 10 foundations around the table.
Wow. Was Luther King there?
I'm sorry?
Luther King.
No, Kingston, no.
We need to make it 11.
Yeah, if you have an introduction, we'd love that. I am not actually.
You know Brian.
Yes. Okay.
That's his son.
Yes. Okay. Well, I can't make that ask, but you can make the introduction. That'd be awesome. Thank you. Appreciate it. Great.
Anything else? Yeah. Then we'll just wait and we'll finalize it in the August board meeting. And I think you're supposed to come back and give us the results.
Yes.
It's not as exciting as
I know, exactly.
Really
It's
take
not as
vote
exciting
here.
as I
Looks like everyone that was presented was elected.
Yay, congratulations.
We have open forum. I don't know if anybody would like to speak. I don't think anybody signed up this meeting.
I'm just going to check really fast. I don't think we have.
With that, I guess we'll adjourn. Thank you, everybody, for being here.